They said only Cinderella could win the prince's heart, but fate chose a man instead. What happens when our male Cinderella falls into a world of giants, and into the arms of the prince who once loved Cinderella?
Welcome to another Bliss Tales video. Subscribe to my channel to keep these beautiful tales alive. New info, we have memberships and supers now where you can thank me and suggest new video ideas. Thanks for your support.
In a town where time seemed to have stopped, where cobblestones whispered tales of better days and shadows clung to every corner like forgotten memories, there lived a young man named Cinderin. His days were filled with the kind of cruelty that comes not from strangers, but from those who should have loved him. His stepfather, a man whose heart had turned to stone after Cinderin's mother died, saw him only as a burden. His stepbrothers, twins born of vanity and spite, delighted in making Cinderin's life a living nightmare. Each morning, Cinderin would wake before dawn in the dusty attic that served as his room. The floorboards creaked beneath his feet as he descended to prepare breakfast for a family that never thanked him. His stepbrothers would throw their clothes at him, demanding they be washed and pressed to perfection. His stepfather would grunt orders without looking up from his newspaper, treating Cinderin like a ghost haunting their home. But Cinderin endured. He endured because somewhere deep inside, he still carried his mother's voice. She had been kind. She had been gentle. And before she died, she had given him a crystal pendant, delicate and shimmering, shaped like a teardrop frozen in time. "Keep this close," she had whispered with her last breath. "When you need magic most, it will find you." For years, Cinderin wore the pendant beneath his shirt, hidden from the cruel eyes of his family. It was his secret. His hope. His only connection to a love he barely remembered. The town itself seemed to mirror Cinderin's existence. Once prosperous, it now stood as a monument to decay. Grand buildings with peeling paint-lined streets where few people walked. The fountain in the central square had run dry decades ago. Legends spoke of a time when magic flowed freely here, when portals to other worlds could open with the right key, the right wish, the right heart. But those were just stories. Fairy tales told to children who still believed in wonder. Cinderin didn't believe in fairy tales. How could he, when his reality was so harsh? One particular evening, after his stepbrothers had thrown a party that left the house in ruins, Cinderin found himself on his hands and knees scrubbing wine stains from the marble floor. His fingers were raw. His back ached. Tears threatened to fall, but he refused to let them. Crying would mean they had broken him, and he wouldn't give them that satisfaction. "Look at him," one stepbrother sneered from the doorway. "On his knees where he belongs. Mother's little prince," the other mocked. "If she could see you now, she'd be so proud." Their laughter echoed through the empty halls as they left. Cinderin waited until their footsteps faded before he finally let a single tear fall. It landed on the pendant hanging from his neck, and for just a moment he thought he saw it glow. That night, unable to sleep, Cinderin climbed out onto the roof through his attic window. The stars above seemed closer here, brighter somehow. He pulled out the pendant, holding it up to catch the moonlight. The crystal seemed to pulse with an inner warmth, as if it had a heartbeat of its own. "I wish," Cinderin whispered to the empty sky. "I wish I could be anywhere but here." The pendant shattered. Not broke, shattered. Into 1,000 fragments of light that hung suspended in the air around him. Cinderin gasped, reaching out to touch the floating pieces, but they began to spin, faster and faster, creating a vortex of brilliance that tore through the fabric of reality itself. A rift opened before him, a doorway made of pure light and possibility. The pull was immediate and irresistible. Cinderin felt himself being drawn forward, his feet leaving the roof, his body weightless. He tried to scream, but no sound came out. The world around him dissolved into streams of color and sensation. He was falling, flying, being unmade and remade all at once. And then silence. Cinderin opened his eyes to find himself lying on cold marble floors so polished he could see his reflection. But something was wrong. The floor seemed too large, the columns around him too tall, stretching up into a ceiling so high it disappeared into shadow. Slowly, he got to his feet, his legs shaking. He was in a palace. But not just any palace. Everything here was built on a scale that made him feel like a child. The doors were 3 times his height. The windows could fit entire houses through them. And in the distance, he could hear voices, deep, resonant voices that rumbled like thunder. Giants. Cinderin's heart raced as he tried to understand what had happened. The pendant, the light, the impossible journey. He must be dreaming. But the cold stone beneath his feet felt too real. The air smelled of incense and roses. This was no dream. Before he could decide what to do, he heard footsteps. Heavy footsteps that shook the ground with each impact. Cinderin looked around frantically for somewhere to hide, but it was too late. A figure rounded the corner, and Cinderin's breath caught in his throat. He was beautiful. Even at twice Cinderin's height, the giant who stood before him possessed a grace that defied his size. His hair fell in waves of silver and gold, his eyes were the color of storm clouds, and his face held an expression of such profound sadness that Cinderin felt it like a physical ache in his chest. This was Prince Auren. The prince stopped, staring at Cinderin with wide eyes. For a long moment neither spoke. Then Orin knelt, bringing himself closer to Cinderin's level, and his voice when he spoke was soft, almost reverent. "You came," he whispered. "The slipper called, and you came." Cinderin had no idea what he was talking about. I don't understand. Where am I? What is this place?" Orin's expression shifted to confusion. "You don't know? But the slipper." He stopped himself, studying Cinderin more carefully. "Come. There is something you must see." The prince led Cinderin through corridors of impossible grandeur. Tapestries the size of buildings depicted scenes of love and loss, of a beautiful woman in a flowing gown and a prince who looked just like Orin. Cinderin recognized the story. Everyone did. It was Cinderella. They entered a chamber where a single glass slipper sat upon a velvet cushion, surrounded by candles and flowers. The slipper glowed with a soft, ethereal light that pulsed like a heartbeat. As Cinderin approached, the light grew brighter, stronger, until the entire room was bathed in its radiance. "It hasn't done that since she left," Orin said, his voice breaking. "Not once in 3 years." "Who left?" Cinderin asked, though he already knew the answer. "Cinderella. My wife. My heart." Orin's grief was palpable. The magic that brought her here was never meant to last forever. One day, the slipper began to fade. Its light dimmed. And when she tried to wear it again, hoping to restore the enchantment, she simply disappeared. Vanished as if she had never existed at all. Cinderin felt a surge of sympathy for this giant prince who had loved and lost so tragically. Without thinking, he reached out toward the slipper. The moment his fingers came close, the light exploded into brilliance so intense everyone in the room had to shield their eyes. When the light faded, Cinderin found the slipper in his hands. And impossibly, perfectly it fit. The court erupted into chaos. Giants rushed forward, their voices overlapping in excitement and confusion. Some claimed it was a sign. Others declared it blasphemy. Cinderin tried to remove the slipper, but it wouldn't budge. It had chosen him, somehow, impossibly. Orin raised a hand, and silence fell. He looked at Cinderin with an expression that mixed hope, fear, and something else, something that made Cinderin's heart skip a beat. "What is your name?" the prince asked. "Cinderin," he managed to say. "My name is Cinderin." "Cinderin," Orin repeated, as if testing how it felt on his tongue. "You have been brought here for a reason. The slipper does not make mistakes. Will you stay, at least until we understand why fate has chosen you?" What choice did Cinderin have? The portal that brought him here had closed. He was trapped in a world of giants with a magical slipper that wouldn't come off and a prince whose eyes held depths of sorrow Cinderin desperately wanted to heal. "I'll stay," Cinderin said. The festival of the Lost Bride was in full preparation when Cinderin arrived. It was an annual ceremony held in Cinderella's honor, a celebration of her memory and a hope for her return. The entire kingdom participated, decorating the palace and city with glass ornaments, crystal flowers, and lights that mimicked the magic of the famous slipper. Cinderin was given chambers in the palace, rooms designed for someone of normal human size that had been built long ago when Cinderella lived here. The bed was soft, the windows overlooked gardens of impossible beauty, and servants brought him food and clothes fit for royalty. It was everything his life in the forgotten town had never been. But luxury wasn't what Cinderin needed. He needed answers. Orin came to visit him that first night, ducking through the doorway built for humans. In this room, they were almost the same size, and somehow that made conversation easier. "Tell me about yourself," Orin said, settling into a chair that groaned under his weight. "Where do you come from? How did you find the portal?" Cinderin told him everything. About his mother's death, his stepfather's cruelty, his stepbrother's torment. About the pendant and the wish and the shattering light. As he spoke, he watched Orin's face, seeing compassion bloom there, genuine care for a stranger's pain. "I'm sorry," Orin said when Cinderin finished. "No one should suffer as you have. And I'm sorry for your loss," Cinderin replied. "Cinderella, you loved her very much." "I did," Orin admitted. "She was light itself. Joy personified. When she disappeared, it felt like the sun had been extinguished." He paused, his eyes meeting Cinderin's. "But the slipper's magic was always strange. It didn't choose her because she was beautiful or kind. It chose her because she was meant to change something. To heal something broken. And now it's chosen me," Cinderin said. "But I'm not special. I have no magic, no power. I'm just someone who survived," Orin interrupted gently. "Someone who endured cruelty and kept his heart soft. Someone who made a wish on a pendant given by love. Cinderin, I don't think you're here by accident." That night, after Orin left, Cinderin lay in bed staring at the ceiling, his mind racing. The slipper still glowed softly on his foot, refusing to be removed. He didn't feel chosen. He felt lost. But as sleep finally claimed him, he dreamed. In his dream, he saw Orin standing on a balcony, looking out at his kingdom with tears in his eyes. And Cinderin knew, with absolute certainty, that tomorrow the prince would receive news of a crop failure in the eastern provinces. When Cinderin woke, he dismissed it as just a dream. But the next morning, as he was taking breakfast in the garden, he saw Orin's advisors rushing toward the prince's chambers, their faces grave. Later, he would learn that the eastern provinces had indeed reported crop failures. The vision had been real. Days passed, and Cinderin settled into an uneasy routine. He explored the palace, learned about the kingdom of giants, and spent his evenings with Orin. The prince was kind, thoughtful, and possessed a dry wit that made Cinderin laugh despite their circumstances. They talked about everything: philosophy, art, the nature of magic, the weight of duty. And slowly, carefully, they became friends. But the visions continued. Cinderin would touch someone's hand and see a flash of their future. A servant would stumble tomorrow. A guard would receive a letter from home. Small things at first, but the gift was growing stronger. And always, when he looked at Orin, the visions were deeper, more profound, as if their connection allowed him to see further into the prince's fate. Cinderin kept this secret at first, afraid of what it might mean. But one night, as they sat together in Orin's private study, he couldn't hold it back anymore. "I can see the future," he blurted out. Orin looked up from the book he was reading, his expression curious rather than shocked. "Can you?" "Just glimpses. Moments. But they're real." Cinderin hesitated. "I saw the crop failure before it was reported. I knew the head cook would burn her hand yesterday. I can see things that haven't happened yet." "The slipper's gift," Orin said thoughtfully. "Cinderella had a gift too. She could sense people's true intentions, see through lies and deception. The magic chooses based on what's needed. But why would the kingdom need someone who can see the future? Orin's expression grew serious. Because something terrible is coming. I've felt it for months now, a shadow growing at the edges of everything. Perhaps you were brought here to help us face it. He was right. Back in Cinderon's world, in the forgotten town that had birthed him, his stepfamily had noticed his disappearance. At first, they celebrated. One less mouth to feed, one less reminder of the woman they had all resented. But then the stepfather, searching Cinderon's attic room, found fragments of the shattered pendant still glowing faintly with residual magic. The stepfather was not a good man, but he was a clever one. He recognized old magic when he saw it. And he knew the legends of the portals, the doorways between worlds that could be opened by those with the right knowledge and absolutely no morality. He gathered his sons. Together, they began to research, to dig through forbidden texts and dark grimoires hidden in the town's abandoned library. They learned of the kingdom of giants, of the legendary Cinderella, of the glass slipper that could grant power to whoever truly possessed it. And they learned that Cinderin, weak, pathetic Cinderin, had somehow crossed over. Greed consumed them. If Cinderin could access that world, so could they. If the slipper had chosen him, they would take it by force. With such magic, they could rule not just the giant's kingdom, but return to their world as gods. Using blood magic and sacrifices that would have horrified anyone with a conscience, they tore open a new portal. Unlike Cinderin's journey, theirs was violent, forced, leaving a scar across reality itself. They emerged in the kingdom of giants during the festival of the Lost Bride, when security was lax and celebration masked their arrival. Cinderin felt it the moment they crossed over. A vision slammed into him with such force he collapsed in the middle of the palace courtyard. He saw his stepfather's twisted smile, saw his stepbrother's hands reaching for the slipper, saw Orin fallen and bleeding, saw the kingdom burning. When he came to, Orin was holding him, his face pale with concern. "Cinderin? What did you see?" "They're here," Cinderin gasped. "My stepfamily. They've come for the slipper. They'll destroy everything." Orin's jaw tightened. "Then we'll stop them." But stopping them proved more difficult than either anticipated. The stepfamily had come prepared. They wielded dark magic that corrupted everything it touched, turning the festival's joy into chaos. Giants fell before their spells, unprepared for such malevolence. Cinderin watched in horror as his stepfather strode through the palace gates, flanked by his sons, leaving destruction in their wake. When they saw Cinderin, their eyes lit up with cruel triumph. "There you are, boy," the stepfather sneered. "Did you really think you could escape us? Even in another world, you belong to me." "I belong to no one," Cinderin said, surprised by the steadiness in his own voice. Brave words from someone who spent his life on his knees. The stepfather's gaze shifted to Orin, who stood protectively in front of Cinderin. "The giant prince. How touching. But you can't protect him. The slipper has chosen him, which means he has power. Power I will take." "The slipper cannot be taken," Orin said. "Its magic doesn't work that way." "Then we'll cut off his foot and see if it still glows." The stepbrothers laughed, advancing with weapons drawn. Cinderin felt terror grip his heart, but underneath it, something else stirred. The slipper on his foot began to pulse with light, and with that light came understanding. The gift of foresight wasn't just about seeing what would happen. It was about seeing what could happen, all possible futures branching out like roads in every direction. And in that moment, Cinderin saw them all. He saw a future where he fought and died, where the slipper's magic died with him and the kingdom fell to darkness. He saw a future where he fled, abandoning Orin and the giants to their fate, returning to his world a coward. He saw a future where Orin sacrificed himself to save Cinderin, dying with Cinderin's name on his lips. But he also saw another path. Narrow, dangerous, requiring a sacrifice he wasn't sure he could make. But it was the only future where everyone he loved survived. I know what I have to do, Cinderin whispered. Before Orin could stop him, Cinderin stepped forward, placing himself between the prince and his stepfamily. The slipper blazed with light so bright it was blinding. You want the slipper's power? Cinderin called out. Then you'll have to understand what it really is. He closed his eyes and opened his gift fully, not just seeing the future but broadcasting it. Every person in the courtyard was suddenly flooded with visions, not of what would be, but of what could be. They saw the stepfamily's dark futures, the pain they would cause, the lives they would ruin. But they also saw deeper, to the root of their cruelty, to the fear and inadequacy that drove them. The stepfather saw himself as he truly was, a small man terrified of his own insignificance, lashing out at anyone who reminded him of his failures. The stepbrothers saw their futures if they continued down this path, alone, hated, empty. And they saw what they could become if they chose differently. The magic of the slipper wasn't about power or control. It was about truth. About seeing clearly. About choice. The stepfather screamed, clutching his head as visions overwhelmed him. His sons fell to their knees, tears streaming down their faces as they confronted everything they had refused to acknowledge about themselves. But the magic demanded a price. To channel such power, to show truth to those who had spent their lives hiding from it, required sacrifice. Cinderin felt the portal between worlds stirring, felt it calling to him. The slipper had brought him here for this moment, this purpose. And now that purpose was fulfilled. The portal home was closing. Not slowly, but rapidly, like a wound healing itself. If Cinderin wanted to return to his world, he had to go now. Leave the giant's kingdom, leave Orin, leave behind this magical place where he had finally found belonging. Or he could stay. Let the portal seal forever. Choose this new life, this new love, this future he had glimpsed in Orin's eyes. Cinderin, no, Orin said, understanding what was happening. Don't sacrifice your home for us. Cinderin turned to look at the prince, this beautiful, broken man who had shown him more kindness in days than his stepfamily had in years. In Orin's eyes, Cinderin saw fear, fear of loss, of being left behind again, of loving and losing as he had with Cinderella. But Cinderin also saw hope. My home was never back there, Cinderin said softly. It was never in that town or that house. Home is where someone sees you, really sees you, and loves you anyway. He reached up, cupping Orin's face in his hands. You see me, don't you? Every detail. Orin breathed. Every beautiful detail. The portal pulsed one final time, a last call to return. Cinderin's stepfamily, broken by their visions of truth, were being pulled back through it, drawn to the world they came from. They reached out, trying to grab Cinderin, but the slipper's magic protected him. As the portal began to seal, the stepfather's voice echoed back. You'll regret this, boy. You'll regret choosing them over your own blood. But Cinderin felt no regret. Only certainty. The portal closed with a sound like a bell chiming, and silence fell over the courtyard. The slipper's light slowly dimmed, returning to its gentle glow. And for the first time since Cinderin had put it on, he felt it loosen. The slipper slipped off his foot, rising into the air where it transformed. Not into nothing, but into something new, a crystal pendant shaped like a teardrop, exactly like the one his mother had given him, but whole and perfect and pulsing with warm light. It settled against Cinderin's chest, and he understood. The slipper hadn't chosen him to replace Cinderella. It had chosen him to write his own story. The kingdom celebrated that night. The festival of the lost bride transformed into something new, a festival of found futures. Music filled the streets, lights danced in the air, and giants and the few humans who lived among them joined together in joy. But Cinderin and Orin slipped away from the festivities, making their way to the palace balcony where they could see the entire kingdom spread out beneath them like a map of stars. I saw our future, Cinderin admitted quietly. When I used the slipper's full power, I saw so many possibilities. But there was one that kept appearing in every happy timeline. What did you see? Orin asked. This, Cinderin said simply. Us. Together. Not because magic demanded it, not because a prophecy required it, but because we chose it. I saw a kingdom at peace. I saw you smiling again, really smiling. I saw myself belonging somewhere for the first time in my life. Orin pulled Cinderin close, and despite their size difference, they fit together perfectly. The slipper brought Cinderella to teach me joy, Orin said. Perhaps it brought you to teach me that love can bloom more than once. That healing is possible. That the future isn't written in stone but in choices. Was I brought here, or did I choose to come? Cinderin wondered aloud. Maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe magic and choice are the same thing when your heart knows what it needs. They stood together as the celebration continued below, two souls who had found each other across impossible distances. The glass slipper's enchantment had ended, but its gift remained, the ability to see clearly, to understand deeply, to love truly. In the days that followed, Cinderin's visions became more refined. He learned to control his gift, to see not just what would happen but what could happen if people made different choices. He became Orin's most trusted advisor, helping the kingdom navigate challenges before they became crises, guiding people toward their best futures without controlling them. And Orin, for his part, found that his heart had more capacity for love than he believed possible. What he felt for Cinderin was different from what he felt for Cinderella. Not lesser, not greater, simply different. Where Cinderella had been his sun, bright and warm and distant, Cinderin was his moon, constant and close and illuminating the darkness. The kingdom flourished under their partnership. Orin ruled with strength and wisdom, while Cinderin's gift of foresight helped them avoid disasters and seize opportunities. But more than that, they showed their people that love could take many forms, that destiny wasn't a cage but a compass, that magic existed not to control but to guide. Months passed, and the anniversary of Cinderin's arrival approached. The kingdom planned another festival, this one celebrating not lost but found love. On the eve of the celebration, Orin led Cinderin to the chamber where the glass slipper once sat. It was empty now, the cushion bare, the candles extinguished. But Orin had transformed it into something new, a gallery of memories, with paintings and tapestries depicting Cinderella's story, honoring what had been while making space for what was to come. At the center of the room, Orin knelt, bringing himself to Cinderin's height. Cinderella was my past, he said. A beautiful, important past that shaped who I became. But Cinderin, you are my future. Every vision of tomorrow I dare to hope for includes you. He produced a ring, not a glass slipper, but a band of silver and crystal that caught the light like captured starlight. In my kingdom, we don't have marriages as your world does. We have hard bonds, a promise that transcends law or tradition. It's a choice, renewed every day, to walk forward together. Tears streamed down Cinderin's face as he nodded. Yes. 1,000 times yes. They kissed then, and somehow, a soft magical glow seemed to flow from their bodies. When Orin placed the ring on Cinderin's finger, the crystal pendant at Cinderin's chest pulsed with warm light. And Cinderin had one final vision, not of danger or disaster, but of a long life filled with laughter, challenges overcome together, and a love that grew stronger with each passing year. The festival the next day was unlike anything the kingdom had ever seen. Giants and humans celebrated side by side, the barriers between worlds feeling thinner and less important. Music played, food was shared, and when Orin and Cinderin appeared before their people, hands intertwined, the crowd erupted in cheers that shook the very foundations of the palace. Cinderin looked out at the sea of faces, giant and human alike, all celebrating not a prophecy or a fairy tale, but a choice. His choice. Their choice. He thought briefly of his stepfamily, back in that forgotten town. The visions had shown him their futures too, paths of redemption if they chose to take them, or paths of continued bitterness if they refused. He couldn't control their choices, could only hope they'd learn something from the truth he'd forced them to see. But mostly, he thought of how far he'd come. From the boy scrubbing floors and hiding tears to the man standing beside a prince, ready to help shape the future of an entire kingdom. The slipper hadn't chosen him because he was special. It had chosen him because he was ready to be seen, ready to love, ready to believe that broken things could be made whole. As the celebration continued into the night, Cinderin and Orin found a quiet moment alone in the palace gardens. The stars above seemed brighter here than they ever had in Cinderin's old world, as if even the sky celebrated their union. "Do you ever regret it?" Orin asked softly. "Giving up your chance to go home?" Cinderin thought about it honestly before answering. "I left behind a building and people who hurt me. That was never home. This," he gestured around them, but his eyes never left Orin's face. "This is home. You are home." Orin smiled, and Cinderin saw in that smile the future he'd glimpsed in his visions. Not perfect, because perfection was an illusion, but real. Filled with challenges they'd face together, victories they'd celebrate as one, and a love that would grow deeper with each sunrise. The crystal pendant pulsed against Cinderin's chest, and he finally understood its true magic. It hadn't brought him here to fulfill someone else's destiny. It had brought him here to create his own. The slipper didn't choose a princess. It chose a heart brave enough to believe in transformation, in second chances, and the radical possibility that even the broken could become whole. So remember, sometimes the greatest magic isn't in the fairy tale itself, but in the courage to write your own ending. The slipper didn't choose a princess, it chose the heart that could change the world. And maybe, just maybe, that heart was yours all along.
If you loved this video, show me some support by subscribing and clicking the notification bell.